Back in the 60s, there was always one sure thing that you could count on, and that was a match race at your local drag strip, either Saturday night, Sunday, mostly any day that ended in a Y. Match Race Madness is going to take you back to the 60s and show you what we grew up with. We're going to start with the Ram Chargers from Hodges Dodges, Detroit, Michigan, racing Hubert Platt in the Iowa Shaker. Watch Hubert's car lead the starting line. Platt wound up driving Dick Brandon's car before the end of the year. And the Ram Chargers car has got some serious wheelie bars on it. The factory really came down on them for doing wheel stands. This is in Aquasco, Maryland. That's gold dust on the drag strip. I think that's where we got our name from. And they used to bring the cars back down the return road, or back down the drag strip, excuse me. And they switched lanes. Now Hubert's over in the Tower Lane. And look at Thornton going through the rosin. Both cars were injected on nitromethane. Hubert's car doesn't hook up in the gold dust, does it? Wow. Hubert left on him, but the Hemi kind of comes by in high gear. Nice shot of the ambulance. The tires back in those days were about as hard as Superman's kneecap. So any traction aid, BX10, the liquid rosins or the gold dust really helped. That's Dan Mancini sitting in a Ram Chargers car. The Ram Chargers win it 3 straight. Okay, now we're going to go back to 1964. When this car makes a pass, which you'll see in a few seconds, look at the length of the ladder bars on it. They go all the way up to the bell housing. We experimented with everything back in the 60s. I mean everything. This is the Bounty Hunters, Bob Banning, Sneed and Rates, and here comes Dave Strickler and Bill Jenkins, and Bill Stiles is with him. And that was a 2% AFX car. And if you look at it close, it's got a wedge hood scoop on it. And this is a team of Sox and Martin, the Burlington Bombers, Princefield Lincoln Mercury. Ronnie's act was always clean. And that was Dave Strickler, the late Dave Strickler. And there's the Hemi. And you can see Jenkins behind the steering wheel, fixing the tachometer. There's Dave Strickler, the late Dave Strickler. Watch this car hook. M&H Racemaster Dragster tires. And that was what the rigs looked like. Now, 1966, things got a little more sophisticated. This is Sox and Martin's Barracuda, and this was early in the year with the short front end, and it had a 4-speed in it. As the percentages of nitro grow, Ronnie realized he had to put an automatic in it and lengthen the front end. And this is at Manassas, Virginia, and definitely a horsepower advantage to the Sox and Martin team. And again, they come back down the drag strip. You might see a wheel stand here before we're done. This is Pee Wee Wallace and a Virginian, sponsored by Richmond Chrysler Plymouth. Ronnie is just as sharp today as he was in 1964. Okay, watch Pee Wee. This was not a factory race car. If Pee Wee's car were a factory car, they would have taken it away from him after the wheel stands that he's going to do here in a second. Yeah. Probably a little bit of ballast in the trunk made that a little easier. There's Ronnie going through the rosin. Okay, now we're going to take you to the Double D, Detroit Dragway, and that's the McKesson brothers. And they were some local racers. And this was not a factory race car. They built it themselves. Now this is Dick Jesse, Mr. Unswitchable, for you Pontiac lovers. You're going to see quite a few Pontiacs, the gay Pontiac, Arnie Beswick's cars. This was a match race in 1965. And we're showing you this because there were 4 cars abreast, and there's quite a tow vehicle. This is Dave Lyle in the Bob Ford factory Falcon. that is now owned by Brent and Terry Hike out in Oklahoma. Here comes Jesse again. Detroit Dragway would pack him in. This is Neil Papielis. There's Mr. Unswitchable. Sponsored by Highland Park Transmission in Highland Park, Michigan. Watch this real close. This is Dick Brannon and Seton Shaker with Delmar Hynett, the late Delmar Hynett. Brannon loses it right here and crashes the car severely. As a matter of fact, when they rebuilt the car, they put Hubert Platt in as a driver. That was probably Dick's last ride. And this is Jerry Harvey in the AFX car. The car is still around. They had to push the dragsters. That's Al Bergler and More Aggravation. Okay, this is Delmar, and filling in for Brannon was Bill Shirey. And this was the fastest unblown Chevrolet on the planet Earth. And Delmar could drive it too. Shirey was the original driver of the Golden Commandos car in 1963. And he was no match for Delmar. I believe this was Easter Sunday, 1965. There's Lyle again. This was the original Falcon. This was the car that they made all the Falcons from. This was the mold. And there's Seaton's car, and there's Shirey's car, and Lyle. No winches back in those days. And Delmar was a big boy. I grew up with him. Shirey's rig doesn't look quite as sophisticated. And this is Wayne Gap, later would be known with Gap and Roush, sponsored by Stu Evans. And here you go, Don the Snake Prudhomme in a match race with Don Garlitz, Big Daddy Don Garlitz. And this is the Lee brothers. They were out of George DeLorean's shop in Detroit, and everything they had was absolutely gorgeous. Okay, they had to push the feelers down. Yeah, I think the Snake did Garlitz in the first round. And this is the Lee brothers making a single. AA gas supercharged. Beautiful, beautiful automobile. Now, this is Billy Williams in the Expressway golf car. And he has a minor problem getting it in the third gear. Carlton Brothers and Billy Williams, Expressway golf. Originally the Bob Ford Thunderbolt, Len Richter drove. And here comes Large Father. Yeah, we're showing you this again. It's 4 abreast. We used to race at Detroit Dragway every Saturday night. Here we go with Garlitz and Don the Snake. We've come a long way as far as putting on a show. We now have electric starters, reversers, B&M Torquemaster, C&T Strokers. Okay, this car has got quite a history. Originally, it was called the Dart Charger. It was built by Dick Branster. Then it was called the Polka Dart, and then Emery Cook wound up driving it for Don Garlitz. And it was a direct drive car. It was probably, the car was way ahead of its time. Ran 1960's. And would boil the balonies all the way down the drag strip. Double D, Detroit Dragway. There's the Lee brothers again. Gil Cohn was the owner of Detroit Dragway, him and his mother. Oh, the Mopar was Della Woods. Bernella Racing, Bernie and Della. Della's around to this day. Big Daddy. Snail. We kind of just left this in. It takes off with a wheel stand truck that almost crashes. But these are some of the things that you would find at drag strips in the 60s. Chevy Rebellion, and he does a serious wheel stand coming back down the drag strip and loses it in the dirt and gets close to hitting the timing tower. There it goes. They were not the safest vehicles back in those days. Ladies and gentlemen, Daddy Warbucks, Phil Bonner. Back in those days, we called him Flying Phil Bonner. And this is Billy Lawton in a Tasca car over on this side. He does a little bit of a wheel stand and gets beat. Here's Ronnie, and that's Al Gravier in Tickle Me Pink. Did you see the trunk lid open? Look at the Melrose Missile with no top on it, racing Bud Fobble in the Hemi Honker. Okay, there's the deck lid. John Healy, Bill Lawton, Tasca Tinker, Tasca Ford. There's Bonner. That was a very, very nice race car. He's duplicated it. This is a AA stock automatic Galaxy. Notice the gold dust, the rosin. And Bonner and clean Ronnie. Half the excitement was the burnouts through the rosin. Sometimes the actual drag race was very anticlimactic. Lawton definitely got it hooked. These are the two Ford factory boys. We would sit there and they would do sometimes 8 or 10 burn-throughs. Tasca's got them by Now we're down to Richmond Dragway. And these were the old NASCAR. Whoa. Color Me Gone, Roger Lindemood. Roger's a good friend of mine. Look at this. This is Don Gay, Infinity, Gay Pontiac, Dickerson, Texas. Mechanic James Austin. You're going to see some Pontiacs here. Look at Arnie, the farmer Arnie Beswick. He's got that car, a copy of that car to this day, and he just ran 802 with it. But notice the hook that it doesn't get. It just boils the tires and it gets sideways. Arnie still does that too, by the way. This is friendly Malcolm Durham. Malcolm's got a race car from 1991 as we speak. Smokey Ruda. And here's Mr. Unswitchable, Dick Jesse, Clarence Wallers, and look at the rapid Roger Lindemood. They came a long way to race. They're both from Detroit, and they're at Aquasco, Maryland. And Roger leads on them and breaks something. Bud Fobble in the honker. Look at the air dam in the front. And Cheryl Greer, Tension. Yeah, that car left a little bit to be desired. Fobbles was one of the original acid-whipped factory cars. Now this is Jack Chrisman and Don Gay, and I think Don was thinking of something else because he got left on pretty hard. Bobby Harrop. He crashed his original car, and that was the Ram Chargers 65 car that he repainted. And that was Tom Sturm and Bill Churchfield in the other lane. And here is the world champ from 1990, and this is our boy, Bruce Larson. What a showman he was. Look at how the injectors come out of the hood. That's Bobby Wood and the Palomino and Don Gay. These cars wouldn't even pass technical inspection in this day and age. They were rough. And there's Bobby Harrop. He works for the railroad. Jesse left on him, I don't think. Yes, Harrop wins. And here's Malcolm's Corvair, 1966. Aquasco. These shows would draw, 8, 10, 12 cars. Cecil County. That was a local Baltimore car. Look at the Melrose Missile, 1966. Cecil Yother and no top. It actually looks like a missile. You'll see Cecil's Barracuda towards the end of this video. Bill McDougal, She-Devil. Charlie Allen, Atlantic Dodge Flyer. Okay, on the other lane is the North Wind, one of the prettiest race cars in the world. It's being restored right now. '64 Bill Strope Mercury Comet. More Burnouts. You should have smelt those cars. Tasca Ford. The nitro was just absolutely lousy in them. I mean, you could smell it a mile away. And Bobby Harrop. How about Bill Flynn in the Yankee Peddler, New England, Plymouth dealers. The Bat Car, Rice Holman, Al Jonak. She-Devil, Bill McDougal. Stu Evans, Wayne Gap. Doc Burgess, he was a veterinarian. Jenkins won the Winter National in that car in 1965. Tasca, that car ran in the high 8s. That was called Mystery 9. The next car was called Mystery 8. And the next car was called Mystery 7. Virginia Twister. Speed one, a New York car. A local T-Bow with an altered wheelbase, local to the Maryland area. Dave Koffel, he is responsible for the cylinder heads that are on Darrell Alderman's car to this day, and that was called Koffel's 1965 altered wheelbase car. Cale Mortimer and Dave Koffel. The Hemi Honker, Bud Fauble. Al Jonak, the Bat Car. He wound up lengthening the front end on that car. And here comes Koffel again. That car was injected with gas. This is Roger's flip-top car, and that's Doug Cook in the Dark Horse. And did that car run? Cook's car had a 392 in it. He won the Superstock Nationals in 1967. And later on in this video, you're going to see the Ghost of the Dark Horse with Ron Snago down. There's Rapid Roger, and that's Tom Snake Jones, who was lining him up. Watch the Stonewoods and Cook car leave. Everything they did was just perfect. Notice the tire smoke. All right, boys. One more time. Roger spent most of his time on East Coast match racing. That's a very, very pretty automobile, and so is that. This is when Ronnie went over to Superstock in 1967, and you're going to see quite a few of them. As a matter of fact, you'll see there's Jerry Stahl with the window open. Stahl turns the wind light on, by the way. You're going to see Jenkins' brand new Camaro. It's not even lettered yet. It just says Jenkins Competition on the door. There it is. This was a Superstock match race or meet. This was Jerry Stahl's day. Tasca Ford, Mystery 8. And the Rum Chasers, the fabulous Ram Chargers from Detroit. We saw their 65 car earlier. Gratiot Auto Supply. The top could be unbolted on that car and they run as a roadster. Towards the end of the year they did. And they had a supercharger on backwards. Car got a little squirrely. That was Thornton driving. Mike Buckle drove this car also. And that's Mystery 8. Tasca and the Ram Chargers was always a very, very special match race. You can see just how special it is here. Ram Chargers got a little crossed up. The showman of drag racing, none other than the fabulous Jungle Jim Lieberman, the late Jungle Jim Lieberman. Could he pack the house? And over in the other lane, we've got Lou Arrington, Brutus. And it all started when Jungle Jim drove Lou Arrington's 1965 car. And Jungle decided to branch out on his own. And you're going to see quite a bit of Jungle in this video. And what a hard racer he was. And a showman. It was a loss to drag racing when he passed away. This is Friendly Malcolm Durham, the Willie Mays of drag racing. I guess you could call Aquasco his home drag strip. Dino Tune Don Nicholson, the Coca-Cola Cougar. Dino was always tough. Back in those days, I would estimate that Nicholson ran 4 and 5 times a week. And you talk about parts and nitromethane. Nitromethane was very, very hard on parts, as you can see right there. This is Sneeden and Reitz, Tom Sneeden, and this car would do wheel stands. They had 2 of them. Chick Danino in the other lane. Okay, here's Jungle again. Goody Speed Shop was a speed shop out in California, and Dino. See everybody holding their ears? It got a little noisy. Dino is racing to this day. It's September 1991, and he just went into 7s last Wednesday night with his 62 Chevy at Englishtown, New Jersey. Meanwhile, back to the match race. Paint by Shedlock. Oh, Jungle left on. There's Brute. Sponsored by Goodies, also a California speed shop. This was one of Durham's prettier cars. This is quite a story to this car. This is Tom Mongoose McEwen, who to this day is running a top fuel car for Jack Clark. Anyhow, this was the old Candace and Hughes car, and he put a direct drive in it. Notice the total lack of reverse. Everybody's pushing the McEwen car back. See it? And watch it light the tires. It was just in and out, just like a rail. Well, didn't light the tires, but it didn't win the drag race either. There it goes. This is Tommy Grove. What a showman Tommy was. And he had a little fuel additive that he used to love, and it was called hydrazine. The stuff would blow up in the bottle if you weren't careful. You used to have to carry it in your ice cooler, and it would seize your throttle linkage up, and what a smell it had. In 1967, Tommy crashed 3 race cars in about 2 weeks. Don Schumacher. But Dono's not having a good day here. This is 3 in a row that we've watched him lose. Okay, this is Leonard Hughes in the Candace and Hughes car. What a beautiful car. And that's Tom Jones, Tom the Snake Jones. Now this is Richmond Dragway, and that's Dave Lyle and Melvin Yao. O.B. Hewitt. And more Tasca Ford. And there's Grove. Did that car run? And there's Bonner. You're going to see Grove in a few minutes driving Ed Sharpman's airlift Rattler. He ran out of race cars, so he had to borrow the car from Eddie Sharpman. There's Malcolm. Watch this, Anglia hit the wall. Oh, you almost saw it. There's the Hemi Honker in Grove. There's Bonner. See the fuel tank in the front? He's got injectors and fuel in it. Grove again. Tommy always did everything right. Look at this concoction here. Talk about a Corvette and a half. Oh my God. This car was actually a rail, and they just put a shell of a Corvette body over it. And it said George's Corvette shop on it. Okay, there's Tony Worley and the Warlord. We're going to show you some rigs. Now, there is Tommy Grove with a borrowed race car, Ed Sharpman's airlift Rattler. Eddie had gone to the Cougar, so that car was sitting around and Grove borrowed it. This is Larry Rees in the Super Cuda from Memphis, Tennessee. And ladies and gentlemen, Jungle Jim Lieberman and Jungle Pam. And this is the first round. Aquasco, Maryland. These boys were from up north. I guess if you're in California, that would mean San Francisco. No, they were from around the New England area. There's Jungle. Wow. By the way, Jungle could drive. Okay, sneaking out of the background, a single overhead cam Ford of Tommy Grove, who now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. See the picture? And there's Larry Rees in a Super Cuda from Coleman and Taylor, transmission service in Memphis, Tennessee, Union Avenue. The Super Cuda spent most of its life on the match race trail, by the way. Well, back in these days, we only had 2 or 3 national events. We had the Indy Nationals, the Winter Nationals, and the Spring Nationals. So these cars had to have a place to flex their muscles. So Wednesday nights, Saturdays, Sundays, most days at NNY, there was always a match race for them someplace. Now this is Roger's later car. Look at the psychedelic colors. This is late 60s. And now Snake is working for Lindemood. Isn't that pretty? Roger's redoing his 1965 Ultra Wheelbase car, a copy of it. This is Dino in 1967 with the Eliminator 2. The 66 car was called the Eliminator 1. Yeah, Dino spent most of his life match racing on the East Coast and the Midwest. He had Lindemood covered and he broke something. Okay, there's Dorm's funny car. Malcolm could be found at Capitol Raceway, Cecil County Raceway, Budds Creek, Aquasco, Manassas. There were 5 drag strips in about a 60-mile area. And that kept the Southern drag racers very, very busy. Tommy Grove, Grove Racing Enterprises. None other than Jungle Jim. This looks like Cecil County. And these guys were really out for blood, too. Whoa. Dino. And Bruce Larson in his Camaro. A nicer man you'll never meet. He seems out of character driving a funny car because he's so polite and so nice. And all he sees is WIN when he gets behind the wheel. The decal on Dino's car is Carcraft. He was an all-star. All right, boys. Dino left on him just a tad. Bruce has got the lead. Welcome to Aquasco. Look at the red Cadillac convertible that Durham is towing his car up with. I bet he wishes he had it to this day. You're going to see the main man in just a second. There he is, Jungle Jim Lieberman. The late Jungle Jim Lieberman. And as I said earlier, boy, did he pack him in. And Malcolm Durham, 2 Chevrolets. See if we can catch a wind light here. Yes. Jungle, Tommy Grove. And here's Tom the Goose again. A lot of the guys from the Fuel Dragsters had to go over to funny cars because the strip promoters were getting so much attendance with the funny cars that the Fuelers weren't drawing anymore. So you saw Prudhomme go over to a funny car. You'd see McEwen. There were quite a few of them up in King and Marshall in Rhode Island. And the other side of the funny car deal was most of your super stocker and AFX racers graduated to the funny cars. So the funny cars wound up being a smelting point for the old Top Fuel guys like Leroy Goldstein and the super stock guys like Dino Don. And there's Leonard Hughes, Candyson Hughes. What a beautiful race car. And a very, very fast race car, by the way. I think Dino Don's going to find out about it in just a second. They were from Louisiana. They still are. Yeah. Leonard put it to him big time. There's Shu, Don Schumacher. He was from Chicago. Wound up being the Super Shoe. Yeah. That was a direct drive in the Corvette also. There's the Ram Chargers. Okay, we're back to the Double D, Detroit Dragway. And this is Eddie Sharpman and Roy Steffi in the #2 Mercury Comet ever built. And it was built by Logie Chassis in Detroit. And it had a single overhead cam in it. And that was Trader Ray Jefferson Chevrolet. And there's Dave Lyle and Bob Ford car. And this is a local Detroit car. And there's Sharpman doing his burnout. And Jim Thornton for the Ram Chargers. Detroit Dragway was where everybody did all their testing, local Detroit cars. That was a local funny car from Detroit. And there's Lyle in his ultra stock NASCAR car. And this is the engine in the Ram Chargers car. Later in the year, they put a supercharger on it, and it went 803, 799. That day, it was running 830s and 840s. This was a very nice race car. And they spent most of their time on the East Coast also. Or in Gary, Indiana. Gratiot Auto Supply. Originally, they were sponsored by Hodges Dodges. There is an SOHC motor. Oh, Detroit would pack them in. They raced Sundays up until June, and then they started racing Saturday nights through the summer. Sibley and Dix. Yeah, Ed Sharpman. Jim Thornton. They used to have, the match races used to be 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, or the best out of 7. In the early 60s, they'd sometimes race 10 times, the best out of 10. And back in those days, they were paid probably between $1,000 and $1,500 for a show. Jungle? Look at Maynard Rupp and Roy Steffi in the Andy Granatelli STP Cougar. That car wound up being driven by Dino Don Nicholson the following year. Now this is Houston Platt and Hubert Platt. Delmar Hannett, Hubert also drove the car. Houston Platt is going to put it in the stands on the next pass. And there's Maynard. He was a field dragster driver also. Okay. And watch the Camaro in the other lane very, very closely. It definitely got a bite. And boy, was that dangerous. I was right there when that happened. We're going to show you that one more time. He'd just gotten the car out of Logie's and it didn't have the wheelie bars on it yet. It wasn't even lettered. Right, here we go. And Connie Kalita came over and just about killed Houston Platt. And Connie said that if he doesn't learn from his peers, who is he going to learn from? This is the late Delmar Hynette walking by the car. That's why we left that in. And this is Neil Papiellis' shaker. Okay, now back to business. Sam Oxier, Bill Jenkins. This is Kenny Warren in the Virginia Twister. And this is York US 30 Dragway. Look at how beautiful it was. Ed Hendricks. It was an airport through its entire existence. They used to stop the race cars and land the airplanes. Okay, Clean Ronnie. Ronnie Sox and Martin, mechanic. Jake King. Dave Strickler, the late Dave Strickler. This was his home track. And Amron Smith Auto Company was right in York, Pennsylvania. Look at this. This is Ronnie, and I'm thinking Bill Shrewsbury or Herb McCandless or maybe even Don Carlton in the number 2 car. That was a Super E 440 car and a Super B Cuda. Danny on the gas. Danny on Gaius. 1969. You're going to see Kalita's car come up here in a second, and that car was been beautifully restored by Brent and Terry Hightower in Oklahoma. And Danny on Gaius was Mr. Unbeatable in 1969. There's Ratch, Connie Kalita, the bounty hunter. And Conrad had a single overhead cam Ford in it, just like Mickey's car. And Connie was another top fuel driver that was forced to go to funny cars because of their popularity. A decent pass. Look at Dino. This is his first pro stock car, sponsored by Pfeiffer Lincoln Mercury in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He only raced the car a short period of time because he could never get it light enough and competitive enough. But that's one of the rarest race cars in the world. Paula Murphy, Miss STP. And there goes Danny. Gets a little sideways, but it doesn't make any difference. He's got him covered like a fat lady on a golf ball. Fast Eddie, the airlift rattler, Ed Shartman, Cleveland Mercury District Dealers Association. Eddie ran 790s with that car. Kenny Warren and Strickler. The next ride Strickler had, this is a Chapman Automotive car from Chicago. The next ride Strickler had was in Ronnie Sox's number 2 Superstock B Belvedere at Indianapolis in 1967. Jenkins? Yeah. We're going to take you back a couple of years here now. This is the Bounty Hunters Dodge. And it was Bob Banning, and one day Bob Banning said that we don't sell Bounty Hunters, we sell Dodges, so they had to take the name Bounty Hunters off their race cars. The Flintstone Flyer. This is Koffel and Mortimer as they stepped up. You saw their 65 Alder wheelbase car. And here's the new Melrose Missile before it was lettered, Cecil Yother. And that's Dick Lohr in the Max Curtis Ford in the other lane. He was from Lansing, Michigan. He wound up putting Ford clinics on in 1970. Pro stock. Yeah. This is Strickler's car before it was painted red. And this is Jungle's, this was his real trick car. This was a 65 car. No, that car is just absolutely gorgeous. And it hooked very well, too. The Palomino, Bobby Wood, Tasca, Mystery 8. Look at the front wheel shake. Yeah, a little sideways. Here's Rapid Roger, Van Dyke Dodge. GT1, Jack Chrisman, the late Jack Chrisman. Roger. Malcolm, strip blazer. Hicks Chevrolet Company, Washington, D.C. There's Brute again. And who do we have in the other lane? Maybe Doug's headers. Lou Arrington was quite a thrasher. Claire Sanders and a Lime Fire. That car was from the Midwest, and it had a 392 in it. And there's Friendly Malcolm Durham. All right, boys. With fuel cars back in those days, the more heat they got, the more heat they got in the motor, the better they would run. So they used to really carry on with some annex at the starting line. Ladies and gentlemen, the farmer, Arnie Beswick in Jungle Gym. Arnie was a showman in himself. He very rarely ever made a very, very straight run. And nobody ever sat in their seat when Arnie Beswick came to the starting line. Mr. B's passionate funny car. Not really. This is Tommy Grove in later years now. Look, there's Arnie. Wasn't that a pretty car? He gave that car up and went back to the 63 Tempest because of the shorter wheelbase and it was lighter. And put the blower on the Tempest. Stonewoods and Cook, Ron Snag O'Donnell. This is the ghost of the Dark Horse. The Dark Horse that you saw earlier was crashed in Alton, Illinois. So they built a new one and they put Ron Snag O'Donnell in it. And Doug was done driving. Tommy Grove, Ford Charger. And this is Stonewoods and Cook. The ghost of the Dark Horse. And there's Brute coming in. Notice the tire rack on the top. And there's Grove. 2 sets of tires. The funny cars had a little overhang on the back of the trucks. I'm sure Grove's tank was full of hydrazine. Steve Canucka Speed Shop. Yeah. Tommy left on him. Okay, this is a very special dedication. And to anybody else that I might have forgotten who dedicated their life to the sport of drag racing. Thank you for watching Match Race Madness. And these are some of the people that made Match Race Madness possible.
Well, I know some pretty women, and that caused them to change their mind. Well, now some call me Joe, some call me Mo. Just remember, Speedo, he don't never take it slow. Well, now he often call me Speedo, but my real name.
Now,